can't give these people the word. Like, I can give you all the resources and tell you that this is the sources, but are you not really going to read them? I can put it in the text so that everyone has access to information, but are you going to actually go and investigate it, right? So.
Struggling away, juggling the days. You know we got it made. When we making it, we making it, we making it, we making it.
And welcome back to another episode of We Making It Woo. This is a weekly conversation with New York-based artists around what they are making and how they are maintaining adequate water levels in the process. If you guys didn't notice, I changed the tagline. I think we're just going to keep it changing, as a way to just resemble the constant ebbs and flows that we have to navigate as artists. You know what I mean? We're just keeping it funky. So, what happened last night? I have not released an episode since the summer. So, welcome back. I'm sure you'd heard from me. But I just want to say, hey, if you haven't, if this is the first episode you're coming back to in a bit. And so that's what's been happening. I will do a long episode potentially on all the things that have happened this summer. But right now, we're going to get straight into what I am reading. Huge shout out to Ama Ma'at Gora. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. She has I think it's her debut novel coming out March 7th of 2020. And I got an early release because of my new job. Shout out to Greenlight. Yes, I started working at Greenlight. I got an early release for the book. It's called A Galley, and I've been reading it. And honey, this book is really, it's really special. I'm not going to give nothing away, but if you want to talk about it more, we'll talk about it. I'm not done with it yet, but I am making my way through. Are you reading anything? Ama, are you reading anything?
Am I reading anything right now? Yes, I am. I'm reading a couple of things. I'm reading, I finished reading Emergent Strategies by Adrienne Maree Brown.
Shout out to you.
And I just recently got Octavia's Food, which is super mind-boggling, and it's like filled with short stories or short science fiction stories by Adrienne Maree Brown, Lolita Marisha, and then a couple of other artists. So it's really good.
Okay, cool. So we are getting back into it. So it is October. We are getting into some fall concerts and some senior theses. And one thing that I did do over the summer is that I did do the Summer Leadership Institute words with Urban Bushwomen. Shout out to them. Now, I met this special guest. I saw this special guest on stage and assumed that we had met. But before I get into that, special guest, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Ama Ma'at Gora. I'm originally from Brooklyn, but I'm living in Philadelphia now. I've been living in Philadelphia for about 2 years now. I'm currently an MFA candidate at Temple University, a graduate of Frederick University, and I'm a local artist working wherever I reside in my body.
Hey,
I'm 24. Right? I'm 24. I'm young and sprung.
I'm digging this young and sprung. So going back to my story. So me and Ama met in my brain back in 2017 when I saw her on the Summer Leadership stage. Somehow her story was so compelling, I thought that we had met. Then fast forward, Ama and I were working an event through Move Out NYC. Shout out to Nigel and Chanel, big homies, and Naya also. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I know you. Y'all, I did not know her. I mean, yes, I was enamored by her storytelling capabilities, which we are going to get into. But it just goes to show you, you think you know somebody, And it sometimes can work out because they feel like they got to think about the time you met them too. And then you find out that you really didn't meet them, but all is well. So, before we get into my grander question, can you quickly let the people know, when is your show?
Yes, so my show is this month, Spooky Month, October 24th and 25th. It's a Friday and a Saturday, and both shows start at 7:30. And the venue that we're occupying is 1801 North Broad Street, which is Temple's Conwell Dance Theater. So that's where I'll be performing my work.
And you said the 25th and the 26th.
The 24th and the 25th.
Sorry, did you hear that again, people? The 24th and the 25th. So if you're in Philly, please go out and support Ama. I'm trying to make it, but again, you know the way my bank account is set up.
It's okay. Listen,
I may not make
sometimes
Look. But for those of us who cannot get to Philly, I'm hoping that this episode will submerge you into the brain of Ama, and you'll hear throughout this episode, you're going to hear clips of audio that Ama will be using to support her work during the actual performance. So just keep listening. Now, Ama, what have you been making?
Yeah, what have I been doing? We're in like the last process of creation, which is like the later process of the creation process. So the title of the work is called Project Assata, and then I've created a subtext or like a subtitle, Conscious State of Rage. And so this work is something I've been actually working on since we first met in 2017. So I feel like this is super full circle for me to be talking with you about it. But so I created this work and started working on it in 2017, and a lot of the inspiration came from reading Assata autobiography. And I feel like it was super impressionable. Like I was just like very inspired by it. And so I took the poems that she had, like I extracted the poems, and I started to work with them as a source for material for movement. And now in its later creation, I feel like it's definitely created itself in some ways. It's definitely something that has engineered itself. And so now the subject or the topic that has been important for me to explore currently is rage. And looking at rage not just from the lens of anger, but rage in love, rage in like all its multiplicities, and all its facets, and how I feel like rage is more so like a vibrational energy that is talking about the extremes of things. And so that's what the project currently is exploring. So the movement, I find myself like getting caught in fits or getting caught in some kind of shaking or vibratory movement, and progression has been another large part of the work as well. So currently centering rage in relation to Assata Shakur, but also in relation to everyone that I'm working with currently in this project. I have a couple of movement artists, about 9 people that I'm working with.
Wow.
A lot of them are from Philly and are Temple students or Temple grad students or undergrads, and then some people are from the city. When I originally choreographed it with a mixed cast of white and black people, and that was an interesting process. And I think from that point, I said to myself, I need this to be a representation of black folk, because black folk have a certain kind of diversity in itself, right? And so now I have lots of queer, beautiful folk in my work. I have a lot of non-binary folk in my work. I have people of all complexions and just different iterations of blackness who stand in their own truth. And I don't think that was initially intentional, but like I said before, the work feels super self-engineered, or like it's creating its own things, and I'm just the person like taking heed of all of the symbols and signs it's giving me.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
when you said continuum, so many things came up for me. So I'm gonna double back and go
Yeah.
back to something you said in the earlier part of what you said, and then I'm gonna come forward a bit and mention something and prod a little bit something you said just really, really recently. So when you first talked about continuum, I was immediately brought back to my work with urban bushwomen and generative dancer and these exercises where you take movement and you put them on a scale and you give it at a 1 and you put it at a 5 usually, and then you put it as a 10. And how by giving things something as simple as a number, it showed me just how much this one movement could be fleshed out. And thinking about this idea of rage, I'm also thinking about a big journey of mine this year has been just allowing for feelings. For those who do not know, I am a Capricorn. My sun's in Capricorn and I have lots of other planets in Capricorn. And I have made a very, I think in some ways, intentional choice around not feeling so that I can remain objective and also for lack of better words, remain mobile in my choices, mobile like on my feet, and mobility in feeling like I always have agency. However, when I've done these exercises where a movement can be put on a continuum, I am reminded of how my feelings can also be on that continuum too. So like there are some days where I am angry, but that anger is a solid 1. Like I am essentially bothered is another word that maybe I'd use. But then there are other days where my anger is a 10 and I'm like essentially ready to be I'm going to try to change my layer. I was going to say violent, but I'm ready to harm someone else's body or harm my own. I'm trying to do better with my language to be clear. And I think this idea of the continuum, this idea of this being a practice that can be dug into has been quite cathartic, but also quite eye-opening because it's created space for me to feel, because it's like, okay, maybe I'm at a 1 today, so it's really not that bad. And then when I am at a 10, I can safely say like, oh, I am feeling this much, but I'm not gonna die. Sometimes I think I will, but I'm not. But then I can access it in a way. I can then figure out other ways to access it versus before I would just shut down and I would just move on. And so I'm reminded of that when you talk about that. But we have to talk. I want to use that as a segue point into the work is creating itself. Please tell me more about that. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You should tell you more about the work in regards to continuum.
No. Tell me more about the work as it's creating itself, because I'm using that continuum. Yeah, I'm using that continuum note to dig deeper into this idea of the work creating itself.
Okay, I see. Yes. So the work creating itself, I feel like I was writing some thoughts the other day, and one of the things that became apparent to me is that this process, I think usually in comparison, comparing this creative process to other creative processes that I've had, it's been really clear, like, okay, this is the beginning, this is the middle, this is the end. But because I've kind of been meditating on this work for so long, I've really, I think, given myself some relief of it, and it's not like, oh, it needs to look a certain way.
Okay.
And because of that, I feel like it's open space for me to be in this space where it's creating itself. And I mean that I have picked up emergent strategies that we're kind of talking about earlier, sort of by by mistake. One of my teachers had it and gave it to me, and it wasn't like a required reading or anything. And I sat with it and kind of opened it, and I was like, oh my God, this is talking about everything I've ever thought of. It's just I don't think I've ever had words, and that sort of feels like what the process has been like. Feels really divine in a lot of ways. It feels, and I think that's really what I'm trying to get at when I say self-engineered or like self-created. It's almost like the work I've been so open to it that it's just presenting new ideas and things for me. A couple of years back, I think, a year back, and it was at 2018, I actually got to meet Assata support her daughter and her granddaughter because coincidentally, I presented a small excerpt of the work at my high school, and someone who was there at the high school was a Black Panther member, and they had me come and perform it for the Black Panther party in Newark, and her daughter happened. It was just like things like that.
Yeah,
like it just super divine.
I believe seeds grow into sprouts. And I have seen sprouts grow into trees.
I want to reflect back to you what I'm hearing. What was divine about it is, or what it sounds like what was divine about it is, you basically just like did this thing, i.e. created some steps, and was really moved by your inspiration. And it just so happened by you just following that impulse, you were then given more information that sounds like it was really, really helpful in a way that like couldn't have happened any other way.
Exactly. That's exactly that.
That's really powerful. That really makes me think about your role in vulnerability in this space that I'm going to put a pin in. I'm going to backtrack a little bit and ask you, what was the impetus for you going from a mixed complexion cast in terms of white and Black to an all Black cast?
Yeah, I think it's important that Black people tell our stories in any kind of capacity. And I just happen to be in the field of dance where I'm telling my stories. And so when I did have a mixed race cast of Black people and white people, I definitely feel like, they were dancers, they were dedicated, all the core things you would need for anyone you're working with in the process, right? But the things that I felt like there was blockage was the relatability, and my ability to even be as vulnerable with people who didn't really necessarily understand my same story. And, specifically I was working with white women who were very timid even about putting these stories on their bodies. And the challenge that presented, and how internally conflicted I felt as a Black woman, asking someone else to try to embody or emphasize something I knew they couldn't necessarily understand. So that felt like a weird task. And so the first time I did it with an all Black cast, I presented it at it premiered in 2018 in January at Movement Research at Justin Church.
Yes.
And when I saw it, I cried because I think it goes beyond representation, but from what I understand, just representation matters because I so often find that I don't think I've seen that many Black women on stage in a really long time when I presented my work at Movement Research. And that was a huge epiphany moment for me.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, how often do I see 8 to 9 Black women on the stage? I don't.
Right.
And that was saddening to me, but also super revelatory. It created revelation for me because I think it affirmed for me, I need to do this to people who look like me. And then now that I'm later in this creation process, I understand how important that is because I think a part of that self-engineered thing that we were talking about happens when you have people who can really, truly empathize with the experiences and stories that that I have my movement artist interacting with.
Right.
And that changes how the movement is created and then what is being shown,
Right. Well, then it makes me think of accessibility and what you have access to. Excuse me, and then what you allow yourself to have access to, which is actually a great segue to my next question, which is first and foremost, how did having an all black cast aid in your ability to be vulnerable within this work?
Yeah, I feel like I was able to be honest in ways I've never been able to be honest. And I feel like with vulnerability, it's like, it's one part to like say like these are my stories. And then other part of vulnerability is who's there to hold you when you are wailing or somber or depressed after digging up things that have been like buried inside of you. And I think what I noticed is that I could go deep inside myself and tell these stories, and I knew every woman in the room was going to hold me. And I think that was the big difference, was knowing that I was going to be held and know I was going to be supported. And I had a rehearsal recently with one of my dancers, and I broke down and started crying. And it was so crazy because, her immediate reaction was to she didn't ask me any questions. She got up and she just held me. She didn't say anything. She just held me, and she let me wail. And I was just like, okay, this, and those are the moments you're like, this is why. This is why.
Now, this just makes me think too. So this makes me think, again, like what you have access to, but what you're willing to access. Because I am wondering then, and I'm going to speak from the eye, coming from PCAP training, I'm going to speak from the eye.
Right.
I know that I am quite hesitant to be around somebody with tears.
Right.
Again, as I've said, honey, I don't be out here trying to feel like that. I can always usually be supportive, but the type of support that I usually give, it could just look a multitude of ways, and some of those ways just aren't supportive. However, I am curious about your white dancer's ability to support given the context of your material. And I am curious about if what came up for them prevented them to have access to support you within that grief. And if that is unclear for listeners, because I guess I could see how that would be unclear. So, Assata Shakur is a prolific, just such a very black character that has some very traumatic experiences, some trauma.
Turnpike in 1973. Zaid Malik Shakur, Sundiata Akoli, and I were on the New Jersey's Turnpike. We were stopped by New Jersey state troopers, and they were out of their minds. My arms were in the air in a split second. They shot me.
That is very, very racialized. COINTELPRO is a part of this. And if you need to know who COINTELPRO is, just Google it. And I have found within certain spaces, I have even, and I want to speak really personally for just a second, within my relationship, if I have a certain amount of guilt, I can't support my partner because the guilt of what I'm feeling is almost a wall that then no longer I can be there for because I'm so trapped up in what I'm going through. And so I'm really curious, number one, about how that came up for your white dancers, but number two, if that came up for your black dancers also, given that, like, again, not everybody handles grief the same way, not everybody supports vulnerability the same way. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I have lots of thoughts on that. I think that the creative process has taught me a lot about people. And I think that what I had the other day as a rehearsal with that particular dancer I was working with is special because I know who she is, and I also knew that I could go there with her, right? And I think a part of my entire creation process is knowing who I have in the room and what I can go deep into and what maybe needs to stay surface level or what needs to be fully anatomical. So I think for me, and this is such an interesting negotiation too. So for me, when I first choreographed it on white dancers, I found that I really had to dig into physical like body sensations that can be used as patterns to source emotion, right?
Okay.
So instead of using something, for example, like what it feels like to be held at gunpoint, which a lot of us, even as Black people, have not experienced, you know?
Right, honey, because I'm true, baby.
You know what I mean?
Ooh.
Right. That is a real thing. Some people have experienced it, and some people have never experienced it.
Right.
And so, in understanding that, and so for my white dancers, I had to connect with them about things that they had carried with them already.
Right.
So it was a lot of conversations actually with them about how they feel as white women and what they feel about their own lives, but also relying on physical patterns to uproot certain emotions, right? And then also being okay with people saying that they don't want to go there, and respecting people's decisions not to go there, which I find that often have to do whether the dancer is Black or white. You know, you know, I just have learned that sometimes you can't. I'm not a pusher. I'm not like trying to find people's trauma. I'm a person that is trying to get vulnerable. And if I find that somebody else is uncomfortable with that vulnerability, I make shifts for that person because I also am not in the business of making people feel uncomfortable.
Right.
So it's an interesting negotiation, and I feel like it's very individual. Like it's very, very individual. And so when I'm choreographing with my entire cast, we are really working anatomically to uncover and unleash things. And when I'm working individually with certain people, then I can get to the nitty gritty, you know? Because I found that I've used a lot of solo and duet work to like create synergy, but also to create the full emotion that I'm looking for.
Right.
And then the group, you know what I mean? And then
that makes so much sense. Well, because at least as a dancer for me, I have found that, you know, I don't know what it is, but there are certain people that make me feel safe, and like I feel like so again, accessibility. Like I feel so available to receive not only what they're giving, but then also to receive like different impulses that I can then show the choreographer, and then we can all be in this place of like creating something bigger. But usually it is in those tighter spaces, and then it has been a goal of mine to like take that great time of intimacy and bring it into large spaces. But yeah, it's definitely a struggle for me. It's something that I've definitely picked up on in my like last year of performing.
And I think it's a struggle for a lot of people. I find more often than not that people are less reluctant to be, more reluctant, or less likely, more likely to be, here we go, people are more likely to be reluctant about their vulnerability than the other way around. I feel like I'm a very rare case.
You are. We about to talk about it.
That, you know, I recognize that early on because I'm like, such an open book, which is a beautiful thing, I think, for me as a creator, right? It makes people feel trusted and honest, you know, like, because I'm so honest and I'm so transparent. But I also know that sometimes oversharing or being too transparent can make people feel uncomfortable.
Right.
But I'm very much always adjusting to what people need in that kind of creation stage, because I really do want people to feel comfortable, and I'm really not trying to uproot people's trauma. I want to talk about trauma, but when people are ready to.
Right.
And I don't want to leave people scorned and scarred. You know, that's why I always have a cleansing goal.
You're not looking to, you're not looking to recreate trauma in your process.
Yeah, I'm not looking to do that, and that's why I do like the cleansing bowl. And I have certain prayers for certain things, just so that if people feel like they're going there and they need a way to get out, I can be the person to simmer the energy.
Yeah.
But these are also tools that I have found absolutely like integral in my work, because how dare I uproot you and not know how to help you get grounded?
Yo, have me out here flying ass out, Gina, ass out.
You know what I mean? I see choreographers do that.
Well,
like,
it's so funny that you answered that way, because I was literally just about to ask you, like, what have been some things that you've given, because I do know Ama in this regard of like how she can access certain things quite quickly in terms of more vulnerable topics. She can access quite quickly and then come out of them. And so with a cast of 9, how it just sounds like you've been so intentional about not only the work that you're doing, but how that work lands amongst 9 different bodies. And I think I'm just so excited and curious about how that's going to play out on stage. But now, one of the things that does great is create a segue to one of the things that I do love most about watching Ama as a performer is how in the moment, in the feeling, in the sensation that you can, like, it's just like, damn, I wish I could do that. But I don't think I've ever got a chance to like actually talk to you about it. Like, how do you do that? Like, do you just like, is this one of those things like you practice it in the kitchen and then it just so happens that like the more you practice it in the kitchen, it comes alive on stage? Or is this a Pisces thing? Because y'all like to feel, and I have no judgment. But or is it like you've built a practice around? Yeah, like I just want to know the how. I'm so curious.
So the how includes, I think, all of the elements of what you said. I'm a Pisces.
Yes.
So by nature, I think I'm fluid in those ways, right? Water has the tendency to fill whatever container it's in, right? And that's a beautiful thing. Everything is touched by water. If it's filling something, right? But I think also too, like, I was raised Pan-African, but my father studied a lot of Yoruba traditions, and I was initiated under a Khan tradition. So a lot of these things are either coming out of Ghana or different parts of Nigeria. And so my spiritual practice in traditional African spirituality has been like deeply rooted ever since I was little. I grew up in that kind of tradition. And a lot of those practices, when you start learning divination and you start learning how to be a priest and all of those things, are borderline understanding how to go very deep into yourself and then come out, right? And so there are certain prayers that I've learned, certain chants and little affirmations I've learned and picked up on my spiritual journey, and I definitely use those to ground me. Before we perform, I always pray in my native language, and so because of that, I think having those as like external tools, also being the kind of woman I am, and just also having a practice of doing this kind of work that's very rigorous and also very vulnerable. I think I've got a system going almost in a way.
Yeah.
And when I start to get like that, it depends on who's around, but I oftentimes just let it be. There were times where I performed, and every time I was sad, and every
Yeah.
time I would feel depressed, and every
Right.
time I would feel like, oh my God, I'm like back where I started.
Right.
And then somebody was telling me you need restoration, and for so long I never really understood the importance of that word. And now, as I'm getting older and as I learn, right, and the more you repeat something, the better you get at doing it.
Right.
And I'm learning every day, and I'm open to that learning. I don't think that today I've mastered it. I think that today I'm still learning just like I was yesterday and just like I will be tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I think always keeping that in mind makes me feel like I can be vulnerable, but it's a good thing because it'll always present an opportunity where I can learn something, where I can find out, okay, maybe I should pray before and after. Or maybe I need cleansing bowls everywhere. Or maybe I need someone who is a priest in the room.
Right.
You know, like whatever the thing is, whatever the grounding is. But I find that I'm good at talking from a place that feels like it's coming from a power above me, whatever that source may be. I'm a believer in God and deities and the universe. I think that all of them help the world continue. I think that we are fractal beings, which means that we're all somehow connected in some way.
Yeah.
And because of these things, I think that I trust myself to understand people. I trust myself to know people.
Yeah.
And so the best way to know people is to know yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so the more I'm learning about myself, the more confident I feel with sharing, you know.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a day-by-day thing.
Yeah.
I'm definitely better some days than others. You know,
Me,
I'm not going to be like, yeah, I'm great.
I too. Well, and I think what you're getting at that I have also just been exploring in my various places that I be inhabiting is, I think for a really long time, I suppressed a lot of things. Partially because, like you were saying, not every space is built for everything. And I think for me, I just was like, 2 out of the 3 spaces I occupy haven't shown me that they can support me through this emotion. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just call it threes. I'm going to call a spade a spade. I'm going to go ahead and throw that third in there and be like, look, clearly no one can support me through these emotional things. So I'm just going to not feel them so that you don't have to support me and I don't really have to look for you to support me. It's going to be fine. But as I'm getting a little older and, things are coming up, I am starting to better understand this concept that I feel like you're describing, which is that the more I do something, whether it's hard or it's easy, I can figure out what strategies I need in that moment. Now, yeah, it might mean, for me, for example, it might mean that I literally do need to have a very set morning routine every day in order to not go crazy on random people, because I will give side eyes. I will use a little profanity. But if I get my morning routine, that is a strategy that I have seen that works. But the problem is that I've come up against is if I don't know what the problem is, if I am not available to the feelings or the whatever that has shown me not to be supported in some way, I can't even figure out how I can ask for support. I can't figure out how I can support myself. And that is such an important conversation when we're talking about artistic practices, because depending on somebody's work, you may just need different support. And I think for me, I would get to be like, oh, I can't work with this person. Nope. Ugh, I'm over it. Whereas it's like, yeah, that may be true, but it also may mean that, like, if I work with this person, I gotta drink 3 water bottles instead of 2, because I need to flush my system all day.
Yep.
But yeah, just again, like I said, knowing what's happening, though, whether it, like, whatever it is, as a way to go through it so that you can figure out those strategies. I've been, meditating on that. Like, if everything is temporary, I do have to go through it so that it can end instead of living in, like,
Right.
ultimate doom. And so that also leads me to this brand new segment that I've been hoping to try out, and I'm so excited to get to try it with you, Ama.
Yes.
A couple years ago, back in 2017, I think a couple months before I saw you on stage, I stumbled upon James Baldwin's lecture, The Integrity of an Artist. If you haven't heard it, I highly, highly recommend it.
Okay,
And
yes.
what I found in that lecture is that he's essentially saying that people ain't out here making art because they ain't got nothing else better to do. They're making art because it's what they have to do. I think it streams out it can tease out or distill some ideas around how making art is integral to a person's being, but also how it's integral to them becoming the person that they're supposed to be. And so I just wanted to, before we get into some logistical things, I just wanted to hear your thoughts around the integrity of your artistry and how your sense of self is so connected to the work that you're making, and how that work that you're making is, changing your sense of self and helping it evolve.
Yeah. Okay, one more time. You said, how does my work?
Yeah, so how is your work evolving the person that you're becoming?
Or the person right.
Right. In addition, like, how are those two things working together to create the integrity of your artistry?
Right. I think that this work definitely makes me like stronger, and not in that weird like, oh, black people and black women are strong, but like in a real way. I feel like strength that invites like weakness, strength that invites vulnerability, strength that invites my full self to the table, whatever that full self may be. I think it's made me extremely courageous, which is something I really think that I don't necessarily think I was honoring myself for.
Right.
I think I was creating and just thinking that, I had to get things done or that things needed to be a certain way. And I think that the evolution of the work and the evolution of me are super, super close. Just because it's become a part of me, and that's part of how I understand the world as a whole.
Yeah.
And I think that things that have changed about me have been like the preciousness that I sometimes want to hold my work to. And I think as artists we all do that. Like our work becomes our baby and it becomes super precious to us.
Yeah.
And that's real, but also that there's a thing called life that gets in the way sometimes of how badly we want to hold something. And I think it's allowed me to let go of things that I have a really hard time just as a person doing. And so this work has really allowed me to like get angry. And I feel like when I was a kid, it was easy for me to get angry, and I was super reactive. And then, everyone convinced me that anger was a bad thing.
Me
and so I kept that with me for a really long time. And I think that what it's allowed me to do is to not be afraid of like my extremes or like the extremities of my emotions, and allow room for those things to flourish and be be a part of how I figure out and resolve myself and my healing. I think Read has been super healing for me, more than I even thought it could ever be, because it's allowed room for me to let go. It's allowed room for me to share honestly. It's allowed room for me to see myself, which is such a beautiful thing. And so, as the work has developed for these years, I think it's been teaching me a lot. I think it's been molding me a lot into the person I think I always wanted to be, but didn't even know I didn't. Things I didn't even have words for at the time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I could have pinpointed that down. Like, okay, after I'm done with this work, I want to be this, and this. I'm definitely braver. I'm definitely more courageous.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a person who's willing to move with the shift, which is something that I never thought I'd be able to do.
Here.
Ooh.
Like a tree in a hurricane, honey, it just snapped in half. Landed on somebody's house and collapsed the whole roof. Yes, that was I.
Okay. It's allowed me to just be destructive and be okay with that. It's allowed me to make big mistakes and be like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's all right. Okay, you made a mistake, and you can sit here and be real angry about it for about half the day, and then the other half of the day, you got to figure out how to heal from it, how to recognize your mistake, and then take accountability and keep it pushing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm yeah.
So a lot of
like this one. Look here, do you hear honeys out there? Honeys, we ain't out here twiddling our damn thumbs in the studio. We is literally trying to be better people so we don't cuss you out from A to Z. Now that does not mean that you might not get one or two words, but honey, you need us in these studios so that we can be the best version of ourselves, so that those of you who work with us get the best of us, because you keep playing and you will get the unrefined, which is fine, but I don't know if you're ready for that. So we're trying to help us help you. You see what I'm saying? Ugh.
Okay, come on.
But that just touched my heart in so many ways. Just our ideas around what does it mean to give yourself permission. I think I want to speak from the I. The things that I've seen within this presidency, but also within these last couple of years, which just so happen to be within this presidency, I think there are so many things that are happening every day, whether you turn it on the TV or your computer or you're walking down the street, and you can see opportunities for folks. You can see where opportunities have been missed for folks to heal from previous trauma. And I asked that question about the integrity of an artist just to uplift the work that we are doing, because we are doing our very best. I want to speak from the I, but also it sounds like what you're saying is you're doing your very best to use your work as an opportunity to heal and move forward. And is that not what all art, I think, hopes to do? I mean, that's the art I like, at least. So yes. Oh, that was so good. Now, we both know that rent is not paid in love and IOUs. So, talk to me a little bit about, as we're getting ready to close, how you financially supported this work, or how you were financially supported through this work.
Yes, because I just paid rent.
Honey.
Okay. Well, part of it is because I'm living in a space where rent is very affordable.
Philadelphia is much cheaper.
Okay, rent is much cheaper in Philly. And also, just like my hustle game is like on 1,000. So for the summer leading up to this event that's coming up at the end of October now, I was just having pop-up shows everywhere. I had 2 shows in Brooklyn, and I had a residency in Philly, and I was also like taking donations throughout that time period. And I think all together I raised a little over $2,000.
And that was doing those shows.
Exactly. So the 2 shows in Brooklyn I had at the Life Wellness Center.
Yes, shout out to Khadijah. We love you so much.
Yes, we do. And so it's so funny my story with her because that's like one of my mothers. That's like one of my aunties. I grew up with Mama Khadijah, and you know, her and my mom were close sisters, sister friends, and so she grew up with me, and I grew up with her kids, and so when it was actually my mother who proposed the idea, and then Mama Khadijah was like, "Yes, this is my baby. I will help to support her in any way." And so she did, you know. And so she created that space for me to be able to come there and share my work and help me with the promotional stuff and got people to come out, which was really, really quite amazing.
Yeah.
And I was able to make a lot of money to fund my project. And then I only was planning to do it once, and then she said, "This is so good, you have to do it again."
Wow.
And so, boom, I did it again. And that was the show that you were at the second time that we did it.
Right.
Yeah, and so that was a phenomenal experience, too, because it made me realize, like, wow, I really have a big audience in Brooklyn, more so than I think I even have in Philly. And people's personal donations really came through.
Yeah.
I had my old dance teacher, Karen Love, shout out to her. He donated. One of my good friends, Winston, he donated. And I mean, people weren't giving small donations. I mean, people were giving large donations. Like, here's this $150, girl, we love you. And I was like, what?
Yeah. And it sounds like, so did you have to pay, with the showings, did you have to pay for that space?
So the first time we negotiated like a payment.
Okay, cool.
And so she, you know, so she could profit a little bit, and then the second time she gave it to me for free.
Wow. And that too just makes me think, like, in terms of financially supporting your work, how can we get creative around the resources that we do have? Because I done heard of many of people talking about they gonna do a showing in their living room. Shout out to Solana Hoffman Carter in the Carnegie Hall that's off 125th between St. Nicholas and Amsterdam.
Okay.
Yes. And how not paying for space to show your work then gave people an opportunity to support this larger premiere.
Exactly.
No, that's amazing.
And it was really a community effort because I feel like, you know, if you really want to see something, you make it happen, right?
Yeah.
And so she really helped me to make everything happen. And after that, I'm like always like absolutely grateful. And then for the Philly space, it was again another situation where I didn't have to pay for rehearsal space. I was rehearsing my piece the whole month of August for free because Lee Stein, he has a small residency space called the Art Room in South Philly, and her and her Mira let me use the stage, which was really a blessing. And then they organized and helped me set up a free showing, which I collected money from as well. So each time I feel I was given the opportunity to really shine and be my best self, and people really got to see the work, which is really, really, really exciting. And also, too, it gave me an opportunity to build the work.
Right.
And forced me to have to work on it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's the hard part, right? It's like, oh, where are we going to rehearse? And also, not just rehearsal, but, you know, getting the drive to work on something so large, because this is like a 45-minute presentation, is really difficult. And this wasn't my first time creating a large scale work like this.
Right.
So it gave me time to put things together and piece things together. And so with the combination of that and the donations to shows, and then also working, I was able to do it. I'm a part-time nanny, and now I'm working at Drexel University. So
shout out to them.
Yes, shout out to Drexel University for employing me on a recommendation, actually.
Yes,
and
come on, community.
Right, and being like, oh, we want you, and being the only person they interviewed, and then getting the job. Like, that is so rare to come by, especially in the university. And so between all of those little spaces, which could be income for me, I'm able to pay rent and also pay all 9 of my dancers.
Amazing.
Which is like I'm beyond proud of myself. I was like, oh, wow.
I'm proud of you, too.
Paid well. And walking away with like a lump sum of money for their time and their effort, which is super, super important to me.
Of course.
Because I'm an artist myself and I've been in processes, too. And it feels good to walk away with something that, you're not going to exhaust in like a day.
Right. I was just telling, I mean, those who've listened to other episodes before, like, yes, we love what we do. Like, you can talk to any artist, singer, dancer. It does not matter. But rent is still due. And speaking of personal experience, I went really broke this summer out here acting like I didn't need no job. But we'll talk about that later. But there is a real stress, and I would even say in some ways like unnecessary stress, when you don't think, when you're worried about where money is coming from. And so how can, like money, I feel like there's this misnomer of like, oh, money is, you can barter and money is not necessary. But like, yes, you can barter and rent cannot be paid with bananas, carrots, or oranges. So what you saying? What you saying?
That's real.
Before we get out of here, Ama, have you been drinking enough water? What have been some, like, are you reaching your adequate water levels? Are you reaching your adequate greens levels? What have you, besides the very practical things like cleansing baths, rituals, prayers, what are some of the other things that have kept you with some sanity during this process that you haven't already mentioned?
Where kept me sane? My mommy.
Oh, shout out to your mom. Your mom's so sweet.
I know. I was going to say, if anybody knows me, my mommy is my best protector. I love my mommy, and she really is one of the reasons why I even had the idea of doing these events. And at every event, she sponsored all the food and the drink,
which is so good.
A blessing.
It sure was.
So my mom
a blessing that was abundant. Because that sangria she made was a bomb. Shout out to you. That sangria was so good. I drank it way too fast.
Okay. She was like, oh, I'm going to make the sangria for y'all. Okay? Okay, thank you, mommy.
Yes.
The first event, she had everybody a little strong. She took me like,
talking about, baby, we trying to get them pockets to come undone.
Okay. Have people give a little extra.
They feeling real good.
Okay. So, yes, my mom, and just having talks with her, and my partner has also been very supportive of me. And, I don't feel like I'm still in that in-between stage, because I just, this week was the first week of starting at Drexel. So I do feel a little out of sorts. I definitely feel like I could be drinking more water and doing more face masks. But what I've been doing, which is really nice with my partner every morning, is doing affirmations.
Yeah.
And so that has been really grounding, that before we get on our phones or before we even talk to each other, we just know to get up, go in the altar room, and do our affirmations. Or if we're too tired, we lay in the bed and we do an affirmation. And each day, we pick yesterday, she did one. This morning, I did one.
Yeah.
And so That's been really grounding. That felt really good to do the affirmations with somebody who is like my lover and my partner in my life at this moment.
Yeah.
What else has been grounding me? Just like support, like yourself, people who are showing up in the ways that really matter and creating visibility for the work that I do and just being being a part of my affirmation and affirming me in my practices. Because sometimes I think I get really discouraged to continue to do storytelling work and work that's around or centering Black trauma, because that's a huge trend right now. So like I feel very blessed to have folks and sister friends like you in my life who are constantly just affirming me and affirming me with real action and not just like, oh, that was great, but oh, that was great, and I have a podcast. You want to get on it?
Yeah, you already know. And
that, So that has been,
Of course.
So thank you.
Of course. Why, thank you. I'm so glad I got cool friends. And to be really transparent, I have to do an episode about myself because you would be episode 27. And it's been really amazing to reach out to people that I really do admire on an artistic level, and just really getting to. I feel like I've signed up to be this lifelong student with the podcast. Like I can literally ask you guys anything, and most of you are pretty down with all my shenanigans. You laugh at all my jokes, and you really give in. Thank you. But you've given me, and I hope other people listening, an opportunity to access what you are really doing every day. Because I know 2019 was a very discouraged year for me in terms of what I thought I was capable of as an artist. And so to talk to 27 different people, and just listen and really hear, it's truly a gift. And I hope that everybody listening as we kick off this season 2, all right now. Yeah, I hope that you become a fan of somebody that you ain't already a fan of, and also just like become a deeper fan of the artists that you do love. I think this community building in this moment has helped me make it and like redefine what making it looks like for me, and that is the title of the podcast, so intentionally. And so it's a gift. It really, 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 really is. So let us restate where we gonna find you at and when.
Yes, so y'all can catch me in Philadelphia October 24th and 25th. That's a Friday and a Saturday.
Yes.
Combo Dance Theater. Ticket link is also in my bio.
Yes.
On either of my social media platforms, that being at Ma'at Works, MAAT Works, or Shea Butter Mommy. And if you find Ma'at Works, you find Shea Butter Mommy. If you find Shea Butter Mommy, you find Ma'at Works. But yes, at Temple Combo Dance Theater, 1801 North Broad Street.
All right, everybody. As always, I want you to make it live. I want you to make it breathe. Maybe make it rageful, since we just talked to Ama about it and she said it's totally fine. But as always, I just want y'all to
tricycles and rocking chairs.
Day.
And I believe that seeds grow into sprouts. And sprouts grow into trees.
Now. We're going to start recording.
I believe in the magic of the hands and in the wisdom of the eyes. I believe in rain and tears and in the blood of infinity. I believe in life And I have seen the death parade march through the torso of the earth, sculpting mud bodies in its path. I have seen the destruction of the daylight and seen bloodthirsty maggots prayed to and saluted. I have seen the kind become the blind, and the blind become the bind in one easy lesson. I have walked on cut glass. I have eaten crow and blunder bread and breathed the stench of indifference. I have been locked by the lawless, handcuffed by the haters, gagged by the greedy. And if I know anything at all, it's that a wall is just a wall and nothing more at all. It can be broken down. I believe in living. I believe in birth. I believe in the sweat of love and in the fire of truth. And I believe that a lost ship steered by tired, seasick sailors can still be guided home to port.